Okay, so I'm going to be talking here about old zombie stories. What do I mean by that? That's like what Neville Goddard referred to as the old man, the old story, or old stories, right? From your life experience, old patterns, if you will, old programs. I've seen people sometimes use the analogy of like old computer programs that are kind of like still running in the background, kind of like services in the computer world. I work in technology, so things like daemons. There's a program, old like service programs are also in the Unix world called daemons. You don't have to know what that means, but I'm a tech guy. If you're a tech person, you'll know what I mean by that. But it's basically old stories, old programs, residual stuff, right? So there are some other teachers out there who have written books and they're kind of popular. I've referred to them sometimes in these things. Sometimes I've responded to people and mentioned them. Um, some of those being people like Arnold Patent and Robert Scheinfeld. I personally, I mentioned before, the one that tied it all together for me was Neville Goddard, and Neville Goddard precedes these people. But in my experience, I came across their material before I came across Neville Goddard. Even though Neville Goddard's been around a long time, I hadn't heard about him until relatively recent, and that's what tied it all together for me. So, if you go by what some of the others write, they maintain, and this doesn't go against Neville Goddard, he just doesn't put it this way, but they maintain that we are these godlike beings, and Neville Goddard basically says the same thing. I am God. We are God, and God is us. God became us. We are. Um, we come from source to have all these limited human experiences, and we take all this rich experience back and enrich source with it. So, in the process of becoming small, becoming human, becoming limited, playing the what Scheinfeld calls the limitation game, and I'm not saying anything of his material that's not he doesn't give freely. Um, but it's really it's kind of like a rehash in a way of Goddard. Um, so in becoming limited and small, we have these experiences. The experience of our life. Now, imagine you're this godlike being living in this uh, energy dimension, right? Where anything you could literally manifest anything instantly, right? Because the laws of physics are completely different over there, or maybe there is no physics. Just it's instant, whatever. So you come into this plane of existence and things aren't instant. You are bound by certain laws of physics, a natural world, and you don't feel limited anymore. You've got things that can kill you, right? You've got wild animals, you've got the elements, you've got other people. So you create all this stuff, and you feel really small and insignificant, and that's the limitation game. So one of the games we play is becoming aware once again of our unlimited nature and how we can, intentionally create, right? So anyway, so a lot of these early experiences in our limitation life, our limited life, our physical life, we like scaring ourselves, and we like a lot of times, we play these tricks on ourselves. So one that I played on myself young was basically I gave myself a weight problem from a very young age, and I manifested lots of other little mean children that would basically ostracize me for it. I was a friendly, loving child with a friendly, loving family. And, yet when I went to school, as a lot of kids do, they come into contact with a lot of these mean little brats that, are not nice. So, what easier way to pick on somebody? It's because of something physical, like it could be anything. It could be a physical handicap. It could be weight issues. It could be that you have to wear glasses early on. There's a myriad of things that kids will seize upon to make fun of. So it's easy to manifest that. That that serves us. It may feel, of course, it feels not nice. And I've seen comments, and I've asked myself this in the past. I've seen comments on my stuff where people say, "Well, I wouldn't, I wouldn't knowingly manifest that. Why would I? Why would I create something that's going to hurt myself? That's going to hurt me, make me feel bad?" Well, we do that because that's the limitation game. What better way to make yourself feel small and insignificant than to create something about yourself that others are going to then naturally make fun of? You're going to create these people to come in and seize upon that, and you feel tiny. You feel tiny, you feel awful. It's terrible, but we do these things to ourselves, right? That's part of the limitation game. And a lot of times these things persist into adulthood. You know, I still have not worked on certain physical things like weight. I still struggle with weight. Well, why can't I just manifest my way out of that? Well, a lot of people say you can, but sometimes it's either not that important at that stage in your life, or you're working on other things that you feel are more important, or who knows what. It's a very complex thing in a way. So to get back to that, so somebody else mentioned in the comments about, well, I created these terrible people to do these terrible things. Well, I just said, even from young childhood, you can create that sort of thing, and it can follow you through life, because you're obviously, if you don't know about this stuff, you're not going to technically deal with it. You're gonna dwell upon it. It's going to bother you. There was an instance when I was a kid, right? I still remember this vividly because it so scarred me. Were these kids down the block, one of which was a daughter of a friend of my mother. They lived on a street below mine, and it was elevated a little lower. It was like a hill. We lived a little higher up the hill. So from our yard, you could look down on their yard. And it was literally down. Like, if I was standing in my yard at eye level, I was literally looking at the roof of their house. That's kind of like the elevation difference. So you would kind of look down from our fence and see their yard below. And a bunch of kids, they were like, "Come on down and play." Oh, great. They want me to come and play. I don't know how old I was, 5 or 6. And this was during a time when you can go do that, at that age. You ask your mother, "They want me to go play. Can I go play?" "Yeah, sure." So I ran around the block, and I ran down the hill there, and I ran around. And as soon as I peeked around the corner, and there they were, as soon as they saw me, they all ran away, laughing. I felt terrible. I cried. I went home crying. And, and I created a mother who did nothing about it. I don't know whether she didn't want to, in my experience, she didn't want to do anything. How it played out is what I'm saying. She didn't want to rock the boat with her friend or whatever. She did nothing about it. And honestly, what can you do about it? What, are the kids going to get in trouble? Then they're going to come around? No, they're not going to like you even more. That's how these stories play out. So that scarred me, and I took that. And a lot of those type of things happened when I was young. So I carried a lot of that inferiority well into adulthood and recreated things along the way. I created girlfriends who cheated on me. I created a wife at one point who cheated on me. Things like that just make you feel awful and tiny, and like you literally feel like a piece of garbage. That's how bad it can get. And to this day, I still have residue of that shows up randomly in my life. I just know now that I'm creating it. It's getting less because I know kind of like how to deal with it now. I take responsibility for it. I don't sit there and say, oh, like in a moment of being triggered, because this happens to everybody, you can forget and react to it, which only makes it worse and cements it. So I'm learning That's a process for me too. I'm learning how to deal with that stuff and how to like not judge it and just say, yeah, I'm creating it. I reclaim my power from that. So, and I recommend you do that with these things. So, and even as little as, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I had this thing where, things were looking great for me. I had moved on from my first marriage. I got remarried, and I was at that publishing company job that I've mentioned in other talks. The one before the great, secure, better paying job that I'm in now. And these were all in New York City. So at that job, this was a doozy. And this was after I had known about Scheinfeld and patent and all of that. I'd already been introduced to a lot of this expansive material, but I had not found Goddard yet. So I was still kind of floating around. I was using Scheinfeld's reclaiming power process, which does help, but it's not as, without knowing the complete tying up all the ends that Goddard kind of provides, Goddard and Murphy, I was still kind of floating around, victimizing myself with these things. So anyway, this guy shows up. I had this job at the time. It was a great job. I was a consultant for a while. I was making great money. It allowed me to pay off my divorce lawyers and buy a really great engagement ring, custom made for my new wife. And so at this point in time, I was still engaged. So this guy comes in, my boss who had hired me. I'd known her from an earlier job, really good person. She's the one who gave me the break back into the area. I was working in one technology area where I got laid off by a big company in a big layoff, and I was in IT, and she got me back into this specialized area of technology that I had worked in prior. So things were going good, going well, and then she hires this guy. So they're hiring people. This guy comes in, really like personable guy, maybe a little too friendly, which we found out later. And this guy comes in, and he acts like he's your best friend. And then it turns out I had a health issue, a health scare. I ended up in the hospital for a few weeks. And in my absence, this guy was going behind and mind you, just really kind of met him. He just wasn't on the job very long. He started snaking his way in and started bad-mouthing, basically a very backstabby, the kind that comes in and causes chaos, right? He's basically a chaos machine. Up until this time, I'd only experienced a few instances of corporate crazy people, but this guy really took the cake. And he was basically whispering in my boss's ear stuff that I never said, I would never say about her. And she never confronted me, but it kind of caused her temporarily to look at me kind of with one eye up, which... So later on, he was doing it to everybody, including her with other people. So he actually caused her to resign eventually. And he ended up getting the ear of these high up people in this organization. But there were other problems, and a lot of us ended up getting laid off. He lasted a little longer, but eventually I heard he got laid off, and he ended up going back into some other profession that he had, something with culinary, whatever. Really weird. So what I'm saying is these old stories, these old zombie stories of, it could be persecution or whatever your particular Achilles heel is, can show up all through your life. And if you don't really know how to deal with them, or you don't deal with them in a way that, deflates them, takes the power out of them, they can keep coming back. They can keep coming back in different ways to haunt you. So the best way is to recognize that you're creating it. Take responsibility for it. Neville talks about in one of his recent things saying, I would never create that. It was everybody's fault but mine. Neville himself said this in one of his things. I would never create such a thing. I was always blaming this one and that one, but never myself, until he realized that no, himself, Neville Goddard, was creating that in his life, just like I was creating all this stuff in my life, and I still do. And you're all creating it in your life. The way to suck power out of that is to recognize it for what it is, forgive yourself for doing it, state that, the truth, that I'm creating this and it's not real. It's not real and I'm creating it, and I take back my power from it. And forgive yourself for it, and just understand deeply that, yes, you're really creating this stuff. And that you're done with the limitation game and you're joyfully moving back towards your infinite, your consciousness is expanding back into what it really is, which is the operant power of your experience. And, I don't know how long it'll take for this one or that one. I guess different people move at different paces for whatever reason. But things should get better. But understand that from a cosmic perspective, that no matter what you're creating in your life, either the extreme limitation or the wonderful expansiveness we judge as good and enjoyable, versus the limitation, which we usually judge as bad and limiting, and why would I create that stuff for myself? I don't want that, but I'm doing it. All of that takes the same amount of creative power from your God self. It's all the same. This is all energy. This is all this matter is created. It's all the same thing at a certain level. It's all energy and atoms and molecules, just arranged in different ways, based on, I guess, our deeper purpose in being here. So, like I said in other talks, whether you're a homeless person with nothing, a pauper, versus a rich billionaire, it takes the same amount of power for your God self to create that scene, that movie, whatever you want to call it. It's all matter rearranged in different ways. We judge it here as good or bad, but it's really all the same at a certain level. So I hope that me saying this or trying to explain it maybe makes things a little clearer for someone out there. Someone mentioned something like this in one of my recent videos that I uploaded, and I wanted to expand on that. I pointed the person towards something that was similar, but I wanted to actually expand on that, so I just did. I had actually forgotten about some of this stuff, and that comment brought it to the fore, and I felt I needed to address it. And again, in my experience, I'm creating the person to comment on that at that time to maybe bring this up and so I could create this material. Thank you, whoever it was, for playing your part in my story, and I hope I'm playing my part well in your story. All the world's a stage. The men and women are merely players. Remember that. It's the truth. So I hope I hit on everything I needed to hit on, but I'm going to end this now so I don't just start talking in meaningless circles. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. Share it out. Share the channel out. I appreciate all your support. And thank you. See you in the next talk.